Coming up on 101 Sports.
The Fall Classic is finally here.
We say hello to another NBA season.
And couches burn in West Virginia.
All that and more, and it all starts right now. Welcome to this episode of 101 Sports. I'm Preston Willett. Steve, in the Premier League, Sunderland players are offering fans a refund after their 8-0 loss to Southampton.
Hi, I'm Stephen Normington, and Preston, hopefully don't have to refund fans after this show. And here are your starting five. So far, over 2,000 Jameis Winston signatures have been authenticated by James Spence Authentication Company. And as we know, signing autographs violates NCAA conduct. With so many stars receiving suspensions for this in recent seasons, how should the NCAA go forward punishing this act?
I mean, it's quite simple. They should suspend them for the entire season, because if they're not going to pay them and they're not going to take a hard stance, they need to just suspend them because it's against the NCAA bylaws at this point. So why are they letting them play out the season? Jameis Winston and Todd Gurley are both allowed to play, but their schools
like you talked about last week, Preston. We want to see some consistent action, at least from the NCAA, and
Absolutely.
It's unfair to make head coaches or institutions make this decision, because coaches like Jimbo Fisher, his contract is incentive-based, meaning if he gets to the national championship, he essentially doubles his earnings this season. You're telling me if you're Jimbo Fisher, excuse me, you're thinking another quarterback can be my breadwinner? Jameis Winston proved that he's the only quarterback that can lead that team against Clemson.
Well, the NCAA is doing a lot right now by just letting them hold on to this power to suspend or not. Look, the NCAA, it's your laws, it's your rules. If they're breaking them, you suspend them. That's
you also have to look out for the athletes. Some of these guys aren't going to make any money. Like, I don't know how much Johnny Manziel is going to make if he's not a starting quarterback. Let him profit off his likeness when he's most popular.
Steve, you're living a fairy tale. With all the hype surrounding this year's World Series, one thing is for sure, it won't be breaking any ratings records. The Kansas City Royals come from the 31st rated media market, and there's no New York or Los Angeles to make up for it. Steve, is a World Series featuring a small market team like the Kansas City Royals good or bad for baseball?
You know, it's not bad, but it's not great. Kansas City is a wonderful story. No. They haven't been there since 1985, Preston. It's a novelty. It's exciting. It draws fans to the games.
Steve, I want to care, but no, it's really bad for baseball. It's really bad because baseball is not at the peak or the high that the NBA or the NFL are on. Yeah, they're not at that level, so they can't afford to have a Kansas City Royals. What they need is that Los Angeles World Series that we thought we were going to get between the Angels and the Dodgers, or the New York Yankees with Derek Jeter getting there.
What baseball needs is respect from the major networks. You're telling me that in other sports league would be content with having a regular or postseason game on a weekday during the day? Other sports wouldn't stand for that. It's a complete slap in the face to baseball. They don't respect your sport.
Just need a little RESPCT.
RESPCT. Okay, there we go. LeBron James admitted earlier this week that the Chicago Bulls are a much better team than his Cleveland Cavaliers right now, which, coming from a player that's historically open with the media, is not that unusual. However, LeBron's comments did illustrate a deeper problem. Is the NBA now a weaker and less intense competitive league, Preston?
It's not weaker. We've just got rid of all the nutcases that have been surrounding the NBA. There's no more Dennis Rodmans and crazy people running around the NBA like that now. We just have honest to goodness, good guys in the mostly good guys in the NBA. Mostly good guys in the NBA right now. And why is that a bad thing? For people growing up watching this game, everyone's always complaining about how the NBA is just a bunch of bad kids just playing basketball, and there's just a bunch of hooligans.
Preston, I understand LeBron's comments. He always speaks his mind. However, a player in the 80s or the 90s would never do this. They were so competitive. Every single game was intense.
They were competitive
you were on the edge of your seat.
They're competitive to a fault, though.
How's it to a fault? You're saying it doesn't set a good example? You want to see your kid?
Look, on the court, yes, but this is off the court right now. We're talking about off the court comments that LeBron James said. He said that they're better. He's not saying that when they're on the court. He's saying that when they're off the court.
But in today's basketball climate, you're trashing players like Kobe Bryant, Lance Stevenson, Rajon Rondo for being competitive players that don't want to be friends with people off the court. I find that ridiculous.
I got nothing wrong with what they do on the court. It's what they do off the court. They need to keep a model citizen standard to themselves because they're the big stars. They're the ones making money. They're the ones in the limelight. They need that image.
That's completely separate from competition, though.
Well, one of those ultra-competitive players, Michael Jordan, said in a comment earlier this week that he disagrees with LeBron and Dirk Nowitzki about shortening the season. Jordan said he never thought 82 games was an issue and said if there weren't 82 games, he would still find somewhere to play. Steve, are these comments from Jordan coming from his ultra-competitive player side or the money-hungry owner side?
Well, as we know it, one thing we know about Michael Jordan is he's going to be competitive in whatever he does. And I'm just going to take the player stance for argument's sake. Michael Jordan is known for one thing, being the best playoff basketball player ever. He's 6 for 6. He's the model for perfection. And what he's worried about is if players come in fresh to the playoffs, they might be able to upend him, break some of his postseason records. And honestly, that scares Jordan.
It's all about the money, baby. That's all that Jordan cares about now. He's an owner. He's not a player. You know, we could take these from what he says, but people are easily fooled by Jordan. You know, he's a money-hungry owner now. If they played 81 games, he would be outraged that he's not making 82 games money.
Jordan's like the hungry hippo with whatever he's doing.
Exactly.
But if the NBA really wants to do something, 44 minutes, that's a complete joke. Suspending Greg Popovich for resting players, that's a complete joke. If you really care about the players and their injuries, do something more than 44 minutes.
All I'm saying is, you know, if Jordan could have 100 games, he would. He just wants to make more money. That's what it's all about. It's all about
the money. After upsetting Baylor, West Virginia students rioted with their traditional couch burnings, causing hundreds of thousands of dollars of damage to downtown Morgantown. Some attributed the riots to West Virginia's in-stadium alcohol sales, as West Virginia is just currently one of 32 schools to sell alcohol during games. So, Preston, considering all this, should schools sell alcohol during games, and what measures can they take to prevent rioting?
I'm going to start off with schools. No, they shouldn't sell alcohol at their games on campus because they are on campus, and if you're trying to get that off your campus, then you shouldn't be selling it somewhere else on your campus, no matter how much revenue it makes. And I know it's mostly for the fans that are coming from off campus, but still, you shouldn't be promoting that kind of atmosphere.
Jamie Foxx's song Blame It is the most idiotic thing. You can't blame things simply on alcohol. Dumb people make dumb decisions. What student body burns couches to celebrate winning a football game?
West Virginia.
That doesn't make any sense. Those people have something going wrong up there because no sensible person would ever do that. However, what athletic directors and management needs to do is prepare for these moments, like we've seen with teams preparing for court storming.
Steve, no, they can't prepare. And they can't even prepare for court storming, so I don't know why you said that blasphemous statement just now.
Blasphemous?
They can't stop it.
I can think of a lot of things that are blasphemous. I don't think that fits the definition of blasphemous.
They can't stop it. They can't stop court storming. They can't stop riots. They don't know how to. They can't. They won't. They never will. Okay? Riots are just a part of the college atmosphere. When you have a bunch of dumb college kids out there like ourselves, you know, they're gonna do what they want to do.
It's irrefutable. College kids love to party, and if something crazy happens, they're gonna party. You just have to prevent it somehow.
Absolutely. Well, that's the starting five. But coming up next, I'm joined by our MLB experts to cover all the bases of the World Series. Stay tuned. They're still playing baseball well into October, and we all know what that means. The Fall Classic is upon us. The Kansas City Royals will take on the San Francisco Giants, and I'm joined by our MLB experts Eric DeStefano and Larry Salvucci to break down the World Series. And guys, it's safe to say this isn't the teams that we expected to be in the World Series, but let's break down. First, we'll start off with the hitting. Eric, break down the hitting in the series.
Sure. So both teams are really, really close in overall offensive production, but I'm going to give the edge to the Giants here slightly. Their weighted on-base average is 308 as opposed to the Royals' 306 mark. And the reason why I say this, the reason why I give the Giants the edge is because everyone in their lineup is above average in terms of weighted on-base average. And the Royals have major holes such as Mike Moustakas, Alcides Escobar, and Omar Infante. And I consider them holes. Like, I know Moustakas has played decently in the playoffs, but if you consider his regular season and career numbers, they are well below average. And the Royals also have players who don't walk that much. Lorenzo Cain, Alcides Escobar again, and Salvador Perez all walk less than 5% of the time. And a lot of the Giants players, I think they walk about a percentage point higher as a team, which can make a huge difference. And they also have a lot of players that walk in the high single-digit range. I think they're going to have an easier time getting on base and scoring runs in this series.
I can agree with that. I'd say the Giants have the edge. I would give a little more credit to the Royals. I see Moustakas, he's hitting a lot of home runs, leading the American League in home runs in the playoffs. And you've got Lorenzo Cain and Eric Hosmer, both hitting over 300, 353 for Cain and 448 for Hosmer. And I think Hosmer in the middle of that lineup is actually going to be the big factor against the Giants pitching.
Well, the Royals may not have the better hitting, but we can agree that they have the better base running, and I think that's how they won a lot of their games so far. But now let's look at the pitching in this series. Larry, break down the pitching matchups we have?
Well, both of these teams have great pitching, and that's why they're in the World Series. I'm going to look at the bullpen because both of these bullpens have been just amazing throughout the playoffs. For the Kansas City Royals, the starters have been decent, but once they hand it off to the bullpen, they've got guys like Jason Frazier, Danny Duffy, and Tim Collins all having ERAs of 0 throughout the playoffs, albeit they haven't pitched in many games, but they're getting the job done when they come in. And guys like Wade Davis, who has pitched in 8 games this postseason, 0.96 ERA, 0.75 WHIP in 9 1/3 innings pitched. And overall, Kansas City has the top 3 pitchers in terms of wins in the AL, including guys like Frazier, Shields, and the top closer with 6 saves, Greg Holland. The Giants have Bumgarner, obviously, the best pitcher in the playoffs. I think we can agree. But Jeremy Afell, who has pitched in 7 games out of the pen, only allowing 2 hits, 0 ERA. Sergio Romo has been clutch, and Santiago Castilla has been closing out the games in the save situations for the Giants. They are about equal, but I would give the edge to the Royals.
Okay, I mean, fair enough. And I think, if we look at the specific matchup, I think tonight you've got Bumgarner and Shields. And this is why I point to the game favoring the Giants offense, because Bumgarner, he's obviously a lefty, and then some of the Royals' best hitters are lefties. As you mentioned Hosmer, and you mentioned, well, you didn't mention Alex Gordon, but I mean, Alex Gordon, phenomenal player as well. I think they're going to have trouble scoring runs tonight in particular.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, we've broken down each the pitching and the hitting. So let's give me your World Series predictions. Eric, we'll start with you first. Who wins? How many games?
I'll go San Francisco Giants in 6 games. And the reason why, I think, again, pitching very, very close. Both are really good bullpens, really good staffs, but I think the offense for San Francisco.
All right, Larry?
I also think 6 games, I think it's just going to be KC. Tonight might be an issue against Bumgarner, but I see them getting it done at home. I think they'll be able to get to PV, Hudson, and Vogelsong throughout the series.
Well, we will see. It's definitely going to be an exciting World Series, but with as fast as the other series have gone this year, we may not be waiting long before the world champions are crowned. That concludes this World Series preview, though. But coming up next, Steve and our NFL expert break down the biggest stories in the NFL this week.
Record-breaking performances, stars traded mid-season, and the Super Bowl champs faltering. What a week it was in the NFL, and I'm just joined by a guy who tries to upend me every week with these suits, Nick Markunis. Let's start off with the big story, though. Peyton Manning breaking Brett Favre's touchdown record. Some analysts are saying there's an asterisk here, though, because Favre was played in a much tougher league for throwing touchdowns with these new rules with defensive backs.
You're right, absolutely right. It's always tough to compare players across air, even though there's some interlap with Favre and Peyton there. But I think there is, the way I look at it is that we have to look at it right now. If we just look at the 508 to 509, then I think we give the edge to Favre because, like you mentioned, now DBs are pretty much frozen. They can't even play defense, really. It's so easy to score.
Well, the thing about Peyton, though, is he's probably going to eclipse this. Some people are saying if he goes till he's 40, he might get 600.
Exactly.
So then you might have to reconsider.
I think we have to reconsider it when he retires. But for right now, I think another factor for Favre is the fact that he played in pretty harsh conditions in Lambeau, if you think about it, when the winter turns pretty harsh there. And then you look at Peyton, he played in pretty friendly conditions in Lucas Oil and then in Mile High. So
yeah, and for me, Favre was just much more of a prolific player, someone you just had to tune in to watch.
Absolutely.
Moving on, though, Friday, the Seahawks make a surprising move, trading Percy Harvin midseason to the New York Jets. Does he have any value there for the rest of the season?
He's an electric player when healthy, but is he going to stay healthy? Is he going to... I think he might walter under this New York spotlight. I mean, you look at some of the reports coming out of allegations of him punching teammates before the Super Bowl, refusing to go back into the game against Dallas when they were, that was a close game. They had a chance to, you need a playmaker like him on the field. He refused to go back in for a Super Bowl a defending Super Bowl champion, New York is going to eat him alive.
He's so prolific and so scary, but he can just never seem to get his act together,
Absolutely.
Unfortunately. But we were speaking about those Seahawks. Right now they're 500. Who would believe that? What's going wrong, and how did they right the ship?
I think we got to look at the line play either side. First, the offensive line. Fun fact for you, the Rams going into this matchup only had 1 sack. The first half, they had 3 sacks. So the offensive line has just been pretty porous. They haven't been opening lanes for Marshawn Lynch. And on the defensive side of the line, they haven't been getting the pressure on the quarterback they need to make that defense so ferocious.
Yeah,
so
if it wasn't for Russell Wilson, who's playing
out of his mind.
Unworldly football for what we expected from seeing him last year in the playoffs. Not really the focal point of their offense. He just seemed like a game manager, but now he's that quarterback that's doing everything for the team. But let's move to another surprising team, the Dallas Cowboys, but on the opposite side of the spectrum.
How about them Cowboys?
They're 5-1.
How about them
NFC
Cowboys?
fans here, so we're not very happy with this for two of our teams sitting in second and third place respectfully.
Sure.
But what's the key to their success?
I think, once again, the game's won in the trenches, and their offensive line is just so stout. They've really committed to building this line through the draft. 3 of their last 5 draft picks have been first-round offensive linemen. I mean, you can see it. I mean, just look at the season DeMarco Murray's having. There's holes everywhere that he can run through. Of course, he's going over 100 yards, and also Romo staying healthy. Getting the protection that he needs to make throws downfield. So I think it starts with the offensive line.
It's shocking to see the shift in play calling, though. Who would ever expect that to see Romo handing the ball off for the majority of plays?
You would never thought that.
And especially with a quarterback as your head coach.
Exactly.
Right?
But with the Cowboys, we'll see. It matters in December. They could go 15-1, and if they lose in the first round, it's not going to matter. So we're going to see in December.
Hey, Nick, great stuff. But after the break, Preston kicks off our first half of NBA coverage.
Welcome back, and folks, the NBA season is almost upon us, but before we preview the NBA season, we need to break down the always exciting NBA offseason. Yes, a man by the name of LeBron James took his talents back to Cleveland, but what else happened? NBA experts Josh Markowitz and Stephen A. Harris are here to break it all down. Guys, let's start with the NBA draft. Doug McDermott, Shabazz Napier, Mitch McGary, Kyle Anderson all got drafted to elite title-contending teams. Josh, which one's going to make the biggest impact?
Look, I think it's Doug McDermott at the Chicago Bulls. The Bulls are thinnest at the small forward position. They're starting Mike Dunleavy, who's there to space the floor. And what does McDermott excel at? Spacing the floor. And, Dunleavy at this point, he's declining offensively. He's been so for the last 3 years. He's a one-dimensional player, takes about 60% of his shots from beyond 16 feet. McDermott's just got a much more diverse offensive game that'll help the Bulls. Much better getting to the rim and converting shots there.
I'm not going to disagree with you on that Doug McDermott bucket, but I'm going to go with Kyle Anderson. Kyle Anderson's being groomed into a Boris Diaw 2.0. They're similar in size, similar ball handling skills. I think at first, Kyle Anderson won't get a bunch of minutes, but throughout the year, Kyle Anderson will come up bigger because they'll start playing more. Diaw's getting up there in age, similar to how Dunleavy is ahead of McDermott right now. He's getting up there in age. He's going to play less minutes, and role players are key. I'd also like to say that when it comes to these rookies, if your last name's not Parker or Noel, I don't think you're going to make an immediate impact.
I think Anderson's much more of a long-term project because of his similarities to Boris Diaw.
Over the course of the year, will make a bigger impact.
Well, look, Doug. I'm going to go with him on this one because Doug McDermott is actually going to start this year, as opposed to Kyle Anderson, who may or may not get some time off the bench. But let's move on to another guy in the draft, Dante Exum. He'll have to adjust to a new role while he's in Utah with Trey Burke playing the point guard position. So what kind of stat line can we expect this year?
I think that's your point. Is you said yourself, Trey Burke's going to be playing point, which means Exum's going to be playing 2. He was poor during preseason, averaging just over 7 points per game, just under 2 rebounds per game. I think he's going to be averaging somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 9-10 points, 3-4 assists. It's not going to be that great of a stat line because he's not a 2 guard. He's a Michael Carter-Williams type big point guard.
The Jazz gave meaningful minutes to Deontay Garrett last year. Their backcourt depth is poor, and because he's 6'6", he can play off the ball with Trey Burke, and he can play as the point guard in lineups with Alec Burks.
That's the problem. Alec Burks is a better 2 guard right now. Dante Exum's not a 2 guard. He's going to be playing backup point guard. They can use him in multiple lineup combinations,
and he's going to get around 30 minutes a game, so he's a better rebounder than Trey Burke. He'll get the rebounds, he'll get points.
They also have a lot of scores on that
Look,
Jazz
Stephen
team.
A., he looks like he's going to be sitting in a 6-man position right now. I don't mean to disagree with you again, but it looks like he's going to put up some stats.
Is that how we're
you
gonna start the
you
year?
get PT, you put up stats. All right, it was a summer of small forwards outside of LeBron as well. Paul Pierce is in D.C. now, Chandler Parsons, Dallas, Trevor Ariza, Houston, and Luol Deng is in South Beach, took his talents down there. So which one's going to have the biggest impact?
Look, I think it's Chandler Parsons going from the Houston Rockets to the Dallas Mavericks because he's replacing Shawn Marion, and at this point, he's better than Shawn Marion, much more efficient shooter now, almost as good a defender. And Chandler Parsons feasts from the corner, where the Mavs run a lot of their offense. He's almost a 46% shooter for his career from the corners. That's huge for this Mavericks offense.
I'm going to give you that stats-wise, Chandler Parsons is definitely going to be the best small forward. But we know that your impact on the game goes beyond your stats. I'm going to go to the nation's capital and say Paul Pierce. That's a very young team. Paul Pierce is the only one with significant playoff experience going to a team that's looking to take that next step. John Wall's only 24, Beal's only 21. He's going to be a great mentor to Otto Porter Jr. He's gonna bring that veteran leadership, and he's gonna bring that playoff experience.
But he's replacing Trevor Ariza, and he doesn't fit the
I
role
don't
that
think we should be
Ariza
focusing
carved
on
out
who's their
so
replacement,
perfectly.
because he's not Trevor Ariza.
Well,
we can both agree on that. But his veteran leadership will make
I like
a
Paul
huge
Pierce in this
impact.
situation just because, Bradley Beal's out now. So who's your de facto secondary scorer behind John Wall? It's Paul Pierce now. I got to go with Paul Pierce here. But we have covered just about all we can of the NBA offseason. But coming up next, Steve is in the lounge to break down the NBA season preview.
Don't look at me. Your hair's a bit frizzy today. Aww. You should pick that up.
Every day, kids witness bullying.
Poor you.
They want to help, but don't know how. Teach your kids how to be more than a bystander. Visit stopbullying.gov.
That's right, people. We're lounging it. I'm joined by Andrew Zung, Alex Ofori, and Chris Edwards to give you an NBA season preview. So let's start off in the Western Conference with a team that almost reached a playoff last year. They have a lot of promise. We've got Goran Dragic, Eric Bledsoe, and of course a new player coming in on a contract, Isaiah Thomas. So they have one of the best backcourts, if not the best backcourts out there right now.
No doubt.
What do you think they need to improve on to take that step and become a legitimate contender?
I think it's the front court. That you have to improve the front court because that's where the weakness is. You have the Marcus brothers, you have Alex Len, Miles Plumlee. There's a lot of young talent potential there, but you're in the West. You got to deal with Duncan, you got to deal with Durant, you got to deal with Blake Griffin, you got to deal with Zach Brown, just to name a couple. And to be honest with you, if the front court does not meet the expectations of just their backcourt, they won't make the playoffs again. That's just a fact.
Yeah. The Morris twins are coming along. They got a lot of promise in the front court.
Absolutely.
But they don't really have a true rim protector, No one. Miles Plumlee, averaged one block a game last year. That led him. That's not doing much for you. And once again, who's guarding Dirk? Who's guarding these guys?
Exactly.
It's going to be really tough this year, at least down in the front court, with really building it up. But I like the potential. I think that's the biggest thing with the Suns is that, yes, maybe not this year or next year, but down the line, they have some great potential down. I really like Alex Len in the front court.
Yeah, next
I think,
3 years. They
can keep him healthy. They have some good potential there. And Miles Plumlee, if he can develop like his brother a little bit, he can show the hustle plays, at least in the West where the hustle plays can definitely make a little bit of a difference.
And one thing that was particularly good about the team was they had a ton of draft picks last year that really stockpiled that talent. Now let's talk about the big three, the new big three, because last in Miami, they did a wonderful job of surrounding LeBron, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh with talent. How do you think that the Cleveland Cavaliers and their ownership has surrounded this big three with talent that will be conducive to their skill sets?
I think they've done a great job with it, actually. You look at it, they're just stockpiled with just knockdown shooters. You got Mike Miller, James Jones, Ray Allen's probably joining them at some point during the season. And they can really just spread the floor for LeBron. And they also have just amazing depth in the front court. You got Tristan Thompson, Kevin Love, Varejao, just to name a few, Haywood as well.
But I don't even think that the best part of them is their players. I love this coaching staff. It's probably the best coaching staff in the NBA, minus the Spurs and some teams where they're always good. But David Blatt, I love the hire. Russian national coach. He's coached in the EuroLeague with Tel Aviv. He has a lot of past experience. But not only that, you then have Tyronn Lue to help develop your backcourt of Dion Waiters and then Kyrie Irving. That's going to be huge. He's an associate head coach, which means he may not stay around long, but it's going to be great to help David Blatt make the adjustment. And then Larry Drew, the former Hawks and Bucks head coach, he even is now on the coaching staff.
Great defensive coach.
If you're going to start a coaching staff to really build a team that has a lot of guys who might not have the chemistry right off the bat, this is the team, and David Blatt's coaching style is going to be perfect for LeBron.
Okay, hold on. This is where I'm going to drop off the Cleveland bandwagon for a minute. Yes, the front court is great. You got LeBron, Kevin Love. I'm not dissing that. They have a great roster. But who are the backups for the guards of Dion Waiters and Kyrie Irving? What if they get hurt? I'm not confident in their bench. Their bench is not that deep. Other than like you said, the front court, Sean Marion, Tristan Thompson. I'm fine with that. The front court is fine, but what if Kyrie and Dion Waiters, God forbid, get hurt?
You can always slide LeBron over the point.
But who's going to back up that? You need someone to back up. The bench is not that good.
I think looking at this, though, is Dion Waiters is going to be coming off the bench probably. And worst comes to worst, you can play him. And then, I'm saying it right now, Ray Allen's probably coming back to the Cleveland Cavaliers after preseason or something. I would not be surprised seeing
just watch out for the bench.
That's an interesting point that you alluded to. I mean, Kyrie Irving really hasn't lasted a season in the association without being injured. Let's talk about a local team for a little bit. The Charlotte Hornets. I love that name, the Charlotte Hornets. Let's get excited, people.
About time.
They're back. But they're not the laughingstock of the NBA more. They're a legitimate contender, and Lance Stevenson is there. Is he the X factor on this team? And will players like Michael Carter-Williams, or Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, sorry about that, guys. Got a little confused with my Sixers there. Will they really emerge and cause this team to be a legitimate playoff contender in the East?
I think they definitely will be. And Lance is a great guy who can do a little bit of everything, so he can be a good cog for the team. And if him and Kemba can play off each other the right way, Big Al's going to be dependable down low. This team has a lot of potential. Even their bench isn't that bad. This team, if Lance can take his game to that next level, kind of like James Harden did and went to the Rockets, this team is going to be a top 4 contender in the East, and they may make some noise come playoff time with an upset.
Yeah. If Lance can, sort of keep his head on right, just getting better control of himself. I mean, he's got enormous talent. You saw the guy led the league in triple doubles last year.
He's a factor.
He's definitely up there. He's an up and coming guard in the league, and he can certainly do a lot of damage. And Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, I've watched. He actually has done well with that jump shot. It'll take some time, but I think the sky's almost the limit for this kid.
And that's the key. It's just not Lance Stevenson who is the key player on this team. It's a culmination. You have to have him being level-headed. You have to have Michael Kidd-Gilchrist keeping improving. Kemba Walker got to keep completing his game. And also, Big Al, he has to stay healthy because when he's on the floor, he's a defensive presence. He's the one who helped out that Charlotte team last year.
Yeah.
So if they can stay healthy, he'll be good.
That foot trouble that he suffered during the playoffs was one of the most depressing moments because he was on a roll pretty much towards the end of the season and really establishing himself as a dominant player.
Gotta be healthy.
That's all the time we have for this block. After the break, Preston and I revisit one of the most historic sports comeback moments in the history of sports.
This past Monday marked the 10-year anniversary of the Boston Red Sox incredible comeback against the New York Yankees in Game 7 of the ALCS after the Red Sox trailed 3-0. The Red Sox comeback in the 2004 ALCS is considered one of the greatest comebacks in sports history. But Steve, we're not Boston fans, so why do we care? What is your favorite comeback from your lifetime?
Well, this is a bit of a long story, so you're going to have to stick with me, Preston.
Okay.
Brian Westbrook returns an 84-yard punt with 1 minute left to beat the New York Giants. How does my mother celebrate it? Putting a Brian Westbrook poster in our neighbor's shed. Our neighbor finds it during the spring. It stung him a little bit. So our families went back and forth with our neighbors, putting props between Eagles and Giants games. So in 2010, they finally agreed to come watch a game at our house. What would become the infamous Miracle at the Meadowlands 2. Unfortunately for me, I had to officiate a game. So I left the game, I was getting text updates, and I kind of stopped checking my phone after we were down 21 points with 8 minutes left. Yep. So I get in the car to drive home, I hear Merrill Reese emphatically describing that Macklin's just caught a touchdown to tie up the game, so I'm freaking out, racing home. I get home to walk into my house to see Deshaun Jackson picking up a fumble, returning it to the house to win the game against the New York Giants. My brother hops up on a table. He's dancing, going crazy. My parents are just like shaking their heads because these first Giants fans, first time in our home, and we essentially humiliated them, and they're never coming back.
Look, that's tremendous. That's a tremendous story. But I would have to go with Game 6, 2013 NBA Finals, Miami Heat versus the San Antonio Spurs. All odds against.
Have you mentioned LeBron?
I will mention LeBron all the time because the Miami Heat are down in the fourth quarter. They're bringing out the championship trophy. They're taping off the floor. Fans are leaving the state. Half the stadium is empty now. In the NBA Finals, Game 6.
Miami Heat fans are leaving?
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
But they're leaving the stadium, and now people are trying to get back into the finals because LeBron's leading this amazing charge up the court. He's going the no headband on. He's leading them back into this game, and then it bricks off. Chris Bosh gets it, passes to Ray Allen. Allen knocks down the 3. They win in overtime. Baby, that's sports right there.
One of those sports moments we all remember where we were for
sports.
that.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. But if you miss anything or want to watch it again, check us out on youtube.com/1on1sports.
Also, be sure to like us on our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter at 1on1sports.
As always, thanks for watching. And until next time,
whose side are you on?